that trade paperback flocking to the
I am joined by the amazing Allison O'Toole, Dan Price, Andre Owen, Fred Kennedy, Chip Zdarsky. Chip, thanks for coming.
What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews, and tonight we're joined by PJ Curling, and we're going to talk about their new book, Taking Out the Dead. PJ, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Heck, yeah. I'm always happy to interview new people making interesting books. So just to start with, PJ, for the folks out there who've maybe never heard your face, or never seen your face, never heard your name, who is PJ Curling?
Well, my name's PJ Curling, and I am the writer and creator of Taking Out the Dead, which is a zombie action comic book with a pirate radio DJ narrator that's currently live on Kickstarter.
I love it. I mean, that is concise, exactly to the point, and I'm actually going to bring up the campaign now, just so people can see that awesome cover.
Covered by Patrick Buermeyer, who just finished up the art on Granite State Punk #4 on Scout Comics.
Oh, right on. Very cool. Well, I'm sure there's a story there on how y'all got connected, but let's start with your book. So yeah, just to start with, like you said, so it's a zombie action survival. It's got sort of the pirate radio narrator to it. I guess the obvious question, what made you want to make this book?
So I've had a scene from this book in my head for over 20 years. Way back in the aughts, I was a volunteer firefighter, and one night we were hanging around the engine bay, and we were having that conversation all dudes in their 20s have, what's your zombie apocalypse plan? And we went around the room, and to a man, not one person said, the first thing I'm doing is stealing that ambulance back there. And it seems like such a no-brainer to me that you get an ambulance and you find people who know how to shoot guns and fix stuff. And
yeah,
that's how you survive a zombie apocalypse. So I've been living with that scene for a long time. I start and stop writing and this, that, and the other. And then November 2022, my mom passed away. And in the whole not processing those emotions, I started to write again. And I was talking to a good friend of mine, Chris Stevenson, who's the editor on the book. And Chris had an incredible relationship with my mom. My mom considered him her other son. So we were talking, and he also had recently lost his dad. So we were both kind of in that kind of hyper aware of mortality mindset where you just decide that you want to get stuff done and like just do human stuff.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, hey, I'm writing that zombie thing again. I want to show you some pages. And he said, fuck it. What do you need to do it? He basically just said YOLO. And I said, I'm not going to ask you, but I need money. So Chris dug in his pocket and funded the 8-page ash can that we produced with Zu Goivea and Marco Del Verde on art and letters. And that's what we used to pretty much pitch the book. And those are most of the assets that we've been using to promote the Kickstarter.
That's amazing. Well, I'm glad you could turn such a horrible and crappy situation into some fuel for you to hopefully at some point between now and then process some stuff. And create something that's interesting, that people will love, that they can enjoy. Just to keep on moving. Like you said, just do some human stuff. Yeah. So real quick, already in the comments on YouTube is Fluid Factory saying, love this project. Thank you.
Fluid Factory actually does all of the music for us. They're a very mysterious musical collective. And Fluid Factory provided the music that's on the campaign video. And one of our tiers backers will get an audio cassette and a 3.5-inch floppy disk. And Fluid Factory is providing all the music for the cassette.
Oh, and that's so cool.
It's all inspired by Taking Out the Dead.
That's sick. I don't want to give away too much, but oh, you know what? We'll get there in due time, not long from now. So I guess then a question I've had is, and I, not to be negative, but what makes this different than The Walking Dead, than the run of the mill every other zombie book that's out there? I already have a few answers from the Ashcan because you sent it my way, but I'd like to hear it in your own words. What makes this special or different among the crowd?
I think it really hinges on the narrator. Before I came up with the narrator character, it really was kind of a typical, zombie apocalypse survival thing. But the narrator, which is actually inspired by a friend of mine who's a professional wrestler,
Oh,
Dr. Carl Martin. He's in his real life, he's a mental health professional, and in his pro wrestling life, he's an evil psychiatrist.
nice.
So I came up with this pirate radio DJ, and he acts as a narrator, and he's the audience's voice and their way into the book, and he lets me do a bunch of really different things. He can provide exposition without blocks of text. He can really set tone with what he's saying, and then since he's a pirate radio DJ, there he is. What a handsome looking guy. His tag team Unstable just defended their Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Association tag team title belts last weekend. So we're very proud of them. Yeah, there they are. That's Michelle and Gabby at his tag team. But because he's a DJ, music is going to play a part in the book, and having music cues, I think, will help the reader kind of understand the time space in the book a little bit better than other stories may do so.
Oh, okay.
Because if you're familiar with the song, you know how long a verse and a chorus are, and through the music cues on the page, I think readers will get a sense of how things are developing, and it'll give them more of an idea of pace of the whole thing. So just hoping something like that is an asset to the reader, to help them buy into the world.
Yeah.
And I'm also not really approaching it as a zombie story. I'm really approaching it more as like a tactical action story, like a John Wick or a Raid Redemption. Heat is a big influence on the book. Kind of that, high IQ action where the gunplay looks and feels real and decisions make sense. I don't want to just put these characters in peril just to put them in peril. I want them to make a reasonably wrong choice to end up in a bad place. So, I'm trying to get people invested in the characters and really make the world feel very real, which is difficult when you're dealing with the undead wandering around.
Fair. No, that's interesting. Like, one thing that I've noticed, a lot of the zombie books that I've even had folks on the show to talk about, they all try and do their own spin on zombies, and I think when those types of comics shine, it's when they actually go, okay, yes, the zombies are a thing, they're a threat, but they're not the focus. So anytime you take the focus away from that and put it somewhere more interesting, which is with the living, you get a better book. And so already I'm digging this. Just for the folks out there who maybe they're curious now, maybe they're like, oh, maybe not, they're not sure yet. Can you tell me about these two, who they are, who they were before the world went sideways, as long as that's not a spoiler? And that way they can sort of buy in, get interested, and know who they're working with.
So the young lady at the top, that's Charlotte. And Charlotte is a young woman from somewhere around Philadelphia who heard a rumor that her brother is still alive in Boston. And she's basically chasing that rumor down, trying to reconnect with her brother after 2 years of pandemic, apocalypse, not being able to really travel. And the guy firing the rifle there, that's Nelson, who is what I call in the world a runner, which is basically a messenger that moves information and goods and whatever back and forth between cities. Because in this world, there are little micro communities that have kind of banded together to try to put together some kind of life, trying to rebuild some kind of normalcy. But because most of infrastructure is down, there's no way to really communicate out beyond line of sight. So these runners provide a service of running stuff back and forth between, in this case, Hartford and Boston.
Oh, interesting. All right, cool. And so it feels a little bit like maybe we're getting a mix of, I want to say, is it Nocterra? Yeah, Nocterra from Snyder and Tony Daniel, with that kind of world set up, which I thought was a super cool idea. And I mean, when all goes to hell like that, it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I noticed during the early days of the COVID pandemic, people were trying really hard to figure out how to have some kind of normal life, whether it was doing YouTube videos on how to make a sourdough bread or hosting game nights on Zoom. People took what they were naturally good at and tried to use it in a way to make a very weird, bad situation better. So that kind of inspired the world building that I've done, where people have, we've got a pirate radio DJ that runs a low bandwidth radio station out of his apartment, because those were the skills he had, and that's what he can do to provide something to his community. Runners have the ability to make it between cities, so that's the service they can provide to their community. So, that was kind of the intent behind those kinds of choices and those elements of the world.
Awesome. No, that is so cool, and I love that, because, and again, to speak of like the people, the living being more interesting than the dead in a lot of these books, is a lot of the times we'll see basically people come into like two categories. Like a lot of the time in The Walking Dead, it was, can you kill something, or are you a diplomat, right? Those were generally the two things you run into. So I like the idea that you're letting people fall back on their skill set, whatever that is, and then the idea that they want to be normal again. They want that community, which I think we all felt like during the pandemic. Like, I know a lot of my friends that maybe I wasn't that super close with just because of jobs, circumstance, all that stuff. All of a sudden we were like, yo, let's like hop on Overwatch more. Let's go play League more. Let's go whatever. Like, we can't get out, but like, let's connect. So I think, that striving for connection is so interesting and human.
It's one of the first things we try to create after we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once our hierarchy of needs are met, then it's a socialization. That's like the first non-necessity that we really try to build as humans. So it just makes sense to me that in a world where the hierarchy of needs are always in peril, you're still going to want to try to have some kind of social interaction with people. Otherwise, what is the point of even trying to survive?
Yes, I love it. Also, great callback to the hierarchy of needs. Beautiful.
Mental health professional, baby.
Hell yeah. I did also want to mention, we've got another comment pumped for this by a name I'm not going to try and pronounce, but I appreciate the comment so much.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah. Now, we're about 15 minutes in, so we're normally where I like to ask this. So before it gets passed, because I normally do, let's ask the question. For the folks out there who are interested, who are ready to go, I guess my preliminary question that I always like to get through, because sometimes people haven't ever done a Kickstarter before. They don't know. They're not sure, whatever. I like to ask, one, what state is the book in currently, and when do you suspect it will be completed?
So we have issue 1 written and done. I might put some finishing touches on it. Just the writing, just the script. The art, I've talked to Zoo, and it'll take him about 2 months to get the 32 pages done. We're gonna have all 3 covers by the end of this campaign, and I'm expecting, if we get funded in June, if we get funded on this round, I'm expecting fulfillment by September.
I love it. Thank you. Clear, concise. Here's where we're at. Here's what we're doing. Here's when you'll get it. Beautiful. So we will have a, for all those kids out there who are going to uni or whatever, just as they're starting, they can get a new comic in their hands. For all the parents, just as your kids are leaving, you can read a wonderful zombie book without having to worry about the kids wanting to grab their copy from you.
Or just buy a bunch of copies so everybody in the house has one.
I love it. Yes. Just get 3, 4, 10 copies. Who cares?
Yeah,
go for
absolutely.
it. Now, my next question is, obviously, people can come. They can see the pages that are up here, the ash can. That gives a really good idea of what you're getting into. But what I'd like to ask is, what is the minimum buy-in, and then what are, you sort of already mentioned, but what are the higher end stuff that you've got going on?
So for one copy of the digital edition, it's $5, which is kind of in line with where everybody is, I think.
Yeah.
There's some bolt-ons with that for $7. You get a copy of the 8-pager we did. Physical copies start at $8, and all the fulfillment's going to be done by Kablam.
Oh, cool.
And then there's a complete set where you get copies, 3 copies of the book, one of each cover variant for $20.
Right on.
I have a retail deal for any shops that want to stock it right out of the campaign for $32. The sneaker net, if you go down just a little bit more, this is where you get the cassette full of Fluid Factory music and a 3.5-inch floppy with exclusive content, exclusive Taking Out the Dead content if you have any way of accessing it. That's $50, and then for $100 we still have some slots left for people that want to be drawn as zombies in the book.
Oh, that's cool. I love that. You've also got, you've got 3 people already in on it. So if you're out there watching, whether it be now, because now at least this information's up to date, or in the future before the campaign ends, if you want to be a zombie in a book forever, immortalized, undead mortalized, I don't know, $100 will get you that. I love that. I highly enjoy when when creators put people into books. I'm actually in 2 books and I'm on the cover of a few.
Awesome.
In various states, because I love that stuff. Now, you were mentioning earlier that Fluid Factory did the music for the book, and they're the ones sort of helping with the cassette tape and floppy. I mean, I suppose that the tech is always going to be around because there's always going to be someone who wants to hoard that and be able to do it. But a floppy disk, that is a choice. Same with the cassette tape. Where did that...
I've got a floppy drive right here.
I love it. Okay, cool. Where did that idea come from? Was it just something that they came to you with? Were you like, hey, if you're in that kind of a world, you got to make anything you can work? Like, what was the concept behind that?
So it goes back to the world building, right? So like infrastructure is down. You can't access the cloud. You don't have access to your Spotify, your Apple Music. You don't have all that. So the DJs like Carl, they're going to fall back on physical media. And, cassettes, I had hundreds and hundreds of cassettes when I was a kid, and they're fairly cheap to produce. And it's kind of I haven't seen a comic book campaign with a cassette tier. So if nothing else, it's something that people say, hey, what's going on here? And I figure, if I can connect with some retro heads, it might be a thing that they pick up on.
I mean, you know what? I agree. It's something I've never come across with in all these interviews that I've done. It's something that I find fascinating because I truly believe comic books are probably the single greatest storytelling medium we have. More so than movies, more than TV, more than, prose written books, because it is so flexible. And I love that people are continuing, just like yourself, to push the medium in different ways, to sort of include audio, to include, like I've had an interview I did where they had VR, not VR, AR, where you scanned the book and it had motion comics and stuff.
Oh, that's neat. That's
yeah.
cool.
So to continue on the music trend then for Taking Out the Dead, you mentioned earlier that you've got basically cues for music in the comic. Are there pages showing that in the campaign, or can you explain what it looks like?
It'll just look like captions with the lyrics.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. I didn't want to get too gimmicky with it, because it's not really a gimmick. It is a device that I'm leaning on pretty consistently through the story. But there you see it in that second panel, and like I said, I don't want it to be a gimmick, but it is a device I can use to transition Carl from narrator to DJ. It's a way that I can connect to scenes in different locations. It's a way to, and like I said earlier, it's a way to express time dilation. You know what I mean? It's a way to put the reader in a space in at least 3 of the 4 dimensions.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Now, the songs that are going to be in the book, given it's an indie book, I always like to clarify, are they, is it like songs from Rush, Def Leppard, or is this all going to be Fluid Factory's original songs? What can people expect?
Book 1 has Ramones, the Ataris, and the Rolling Dead. The Rolling Dead. The Rolling Stones.
Stones. I mean, hey, maybe they are.
I mean, Christ, by now, a couple of them have to be, right?
I would. Probably. Although, I don't know. The way Keith Richards is, maybe he can.
Oh my God, he's done a phenomenal job of pickling himself over the last 60 years.
Yeah. Yes, he has. But hey, he's still around. He's still kicking. Fluid Factory also commented, for the prequel, we're going to be producing a phonograph, which I think that's an amazing idea.
I wouldn't put it past them.
You know what? If they could figure out how to get the clay to press in right, that would be sick.
And I'm sure there's enough hipsters out there that would want it that they could sell it.
That would be so cool. So when it comes to making the comic, then one question I'd love to ask is, how did you get into contact with your team? So you've read it. Was it the now famous / comic collabs? Yeah,
comic book collabs.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What has it been like working with them?
It's been smooth. When I put up the original post looking for an artist and a letterer, I basically said, my partner and I are middle-aged men with a little bit of money to spend to make this book look professional. We hope to work with other professionals. And I got a lot of great responses. But, Zoo had worked on a book with Noam Chomsky. He had done the Equilibrium adaptation for Titan. He did a run on Stargate Atlantis and/or Universe. So he's got a lot of experience in the field. Marco has been lettering since I was in high school. And at my age, if you've been doing something that long, it's an accomplishment. But he's worked for IDW, Image, DC, Heavy Metal. He's worked for a lot of the big guns. So I knew, just based on their track record, that, if I gave them pages, I was going to get pages. Mm-hmm. They weren't going to flake on me. And they didn't. And, in the scripts and the panel descriptions, I try to give Zoo as much information as I can. And because he is a professional, because he does have the experience he has and he is as good as he is, I trust him completely that he'll come up with the best way of showing that panel.
I love that. Because one of the things that I enjoy asking that sometimes people don't think about is the fact that comic books is highly collaborative. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people try and fight that, which I think is such a poor idea, because there's so much that you can do when you are just open to collaboration. So given, like you said, you're trying to provide a lot of information, but I suppose, have you yet in conversation gotten any sort of demo pages back where you've been through that process to be able to hey, these are the types of changes I want you as an artist to make? Have you been that far?
Yeah, and it's only been detail-y type stuff. It's been, I don't want to say nitpicky, but it's been, how a character is holding a weapon, or, it's just been stuff like that. There really haven't been any, we've been on the same page pretty consistently.
Right on. I dig it. It's something I'm interested in because like you have an artistic vision for how this should look and the way that these scenes play out. And then as an artist, they'll have their own interpretation of your words, and then they have to go about figuring out, hey, here's how I would make this.
Yeah.
So I'm always interested in that interplay. This is just their deviant art. So I'm just going through just so people can see sort of what to expect from the book.
And like,
I haven't.
I don't really think visually. So even with describing settings, like the way I describe it may not physically be possible. So Zoo's been able to like translate what I've given him into something that will make sense. And
Right
being writer only in what is a fine artist medium, I just can't be too precious with my material, because my material has to get translated through the artist, because the artist is gonna have a different understanding of what I'm writing than I do, just like the reader is gonna have a different understanding of what they're seeing when they see the finished product. So it's really kind of a three-way dance between the writer, the artist, and the audience to really come together to tell a coherent story that makes any kind of sense.
Yes. Yeah. It, like I said, that's a part of, I think, why I like comics so much, because all of you, the creators, have to sort of just trust each other, compromise, work with each other to produce something that is fascinating to read, but also just awesome.
Yeah. And what's really been fun is Zoo's based in Portugal, and this book is very Boston. Like that panel right there on the left, that's Fenway Park. And top right, that's the teammate statue on, I think it's on Yawkey Street. So trying to give him very specific places. I've had to just give him Google Map coordinates, but he's you see, he's done a phenomenal job. I mean, that's a pretty good translation of what that street looks like.
I mean, I also got to give him kudos because he's drawing a heck of a lot of structural stuff. And I know as an artist, anytime you've got to draw like mechanical things, buildings that well, especially when they're as iconic as Fenway, like, ooh, but hey.
It's a big ass.
Yeah, it's a big ass, but he's doing it. It looks great.
Yeah. And, I'm trying to find the line between making sure I get the details right and not having too many details that start to muddle together, because I want the book to be really realistic, but I also can't overdo the details. Otherwise everything gets lost in the sauce,
100%. Like it's one of those things where, especially as a visual medium, you want to put in, and I've heard many artists say this, where they're like, yeah, especially with digital now, because I can zoom into a panel that's maybe in reality going to be printed that big, but they're like, I can zoom in till it's as big as a page and start just going. Yeah. And they're like, I've done that. And then you zoom out and you don't see it because it's just too small. Yeah. So yeah, get it.
It's part of why the book's black and white, because, I know that I'm not going to be able to get every detail in there. So, I want the reader to be able to fill in the blanks for themselves, because everybody kind of knows what a rifle looks like, but people think of different rifle, they think of them differently a little bit. People see baseball hats a little bit, like everything. People translate everything, like ambulances. Everybody knows what an ambulance looks like, but everyone is different because of the paint schemes they all have.
Yeah,
so 100%. Giving the reader the chance to fill in those details and being able to not overdo it with the details, I think will help people really personalize it and make the story their own, which when I start killing characters is going to make it so much better.
I mean, you're not wrong. And it's one of those things too, where I find, like, obviously famously The Walking Dead to my knowledge, started it. Although, I mean, that's not true. But the most famous example of any sort of comic that's just doing black and white to me is The Walking Dead.
Mhm.
And I think there is a mood that it helps set. But it also, because of those details, yeah, you actually get to see specific things like texture, I think, better,
Mhm.
where it can help pull you in. And that way, yeah, you're more responsible as a viewer or a reader because your mind is filling in those blanks and allowing you to just run with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Again, like, if for the folks out there, again, watching now or in the future, do not let black and white comics scare you. It's not a bad thing. It's just a style. It'll look different, and I promise you it'll be just as good, if not
Yeah.
a little better.
Because Charlotte there, you don't know what color hair she has, but when people think about that character, they're going to naturally fill in that blank. So for some people, she's going to be blonde, brunette, red. Like, everybody will have a different image of who this character is.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love that stuff because it really, like I said, it lets you have ownership over the story while you're enjoying it, and it just makes for some good times with your comics. Now, you mentioned earlier it's 32 pages, correct?
Mhm.
Love it. Um, Now, right now, you're already, this is Canadian, mind you, the prices are in Canadian. So you're at 1,500 Canadian out of your goal of 6,831. So I'm guessing you're actually going for 5,750?
$5,000 even.
Oh, 5 grand even. Awesome. Even better. You've got 28 backers, 19 days to go. One of the things that I'm always enjoying to ask is the statistics that the site gives you, Kickstarter, is fairly detailed. And I'm always interested in who's reading comics, where they're from, and all that good stuff. So, have you had anyone from anywhere you didn't expect pledge to get your book?
Actually, Travis Gibb, the writer of Granite State Punk, backed, which was pretty cool.
Very cool.
We share an artist, so that was probably my way in. But as a fan of his book, for him to just kind of jump, like, I didn't say, "Hey, I stole your artist," but
Yeah.
for him to jump on board and be interested, even if it is just because his buddy's drawn the cover, yeah, I'm cool with that.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I'm finding more and more the comics community, the actual creators, like not the companies, but the actual writers, artists, all of that. Yeah, they're really supportive of each other. So like when you can have stuff like that happen, beauty.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of the backers are other creators, and it looks like Wally has backed in the last half hour. So if Wally's watching, thank you, Wally. I appreciate you.
Much appreciated, Wally. That's sick. So I think my next question for you then is, you've got the script for number 1 totally finished, ready to go off to the printers or the artists, I should say. I'm assuming then the funds that you're raising here are going towards paying your artists, then doing printing, shipping, all the fun stuff. Very normal. One thing though I do like to ask and let people know, because this, from the writing here, issue 1 campaign live now, so this is not a one shot. This is intent to be more. Do you have a specific number of issues in mind? Do you have an arc in mind?
If I'm fortunate enough to turn this into a recurring, I would like to see it turn into almost like an A-team, like a villain of the week type thing, where there's subsequent story arcs. The story we're telling right now, it's called The Last Homestand, and it's going to be probably 2 issues at about 64 pages. I've got 15 pages of issue 2 drafted. It'll probably, how much of that ends up in book 2, if we're fortunate enough to do a second book, I don't know, but I kind of like where the story's going so far. And long term, I do know how the whole series ends. And I do have at least one character death scene written that I'm going to hold on to until people have invested and really care about that character.
Oh God!
And then I'm going to kill him.
I love it. Like it's one of those things where I like that you're not being protective of your characters, because I find many series, most notably anything from Marvel or DC, they're so afraid to do anything to their characters that you're like, your stakes are skewed because like, eh. So I appreciate.
Well, I mean, those writers are more caretakers. When you get hired to do a run on Iron Man is the whole shebang. You can't really.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really have the kind of fun you would want to if it was your character, and you can do whatever you want because you don't have to worry about Disney and merchandising, which is a problem I would have no problem dealing. I'd love to have those kind of problems, but
yeah,
but right now these are all characters that nobody has met and nobody really gives a shit about. So I can do whatever I want to them as long as it makes sense, as long as the decisions feel realistic,
I like it. And when it comes to, like you said earlier, I'm really caught up with the being human part and doing human things. And what you mentioned earlier with sort of wanting that sense of normalcy. I guess how to say this? What inspired? No. Are there any specific things that you sort of went through? Passing of a parent, obviously, but any other events that happened during the pandemic that have informed the way you've written this, how you're writing people, and how was that experience?
Just in thinking it as you're asking the question, I think a lot of it does come back to my mom passing, because my mom was a single parent. I was fortunate that I lived with my grandparents and my mom while my grandparents were still alive. But for the last 20 years, it was me and my mom, and then my wife when I met her. And I don't think I ever conceived of a time when I wouldn't have my mom around. It was an unexpected death. She just went to sleep one night and didn't wake up. And since then, I think I've been really struggling to get back to a sense of normal for me. I've really felt kind of untethered because I did move away from home. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania. I live in New England now. So there's a distance between what home was for 44 years of my life. So I think that this subconsciously has just been an expression of me trying to fight through this very weird, traumatic time and get back to a place of normalcy for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't gone through that, and I can't imagine what that will be like. So
it's tough.
I bet.
Tough.
Like,
would not recommend, dude. Would not recommend.
No. I honestly, I thank you for sharing. It very infrequently do I get that personal or this personal with someone on my show because, sometimes it's just people who want to just make cool comics of giant robots punching each other in the face, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I love big robots punching each other in the face.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but I really appreciate you sharing that, and it goes to speak to the amount of care and passion that you're going to put into this project when it comes to the way you're going to show people and community and what they will go through as you're trying to piece together some semblance of normalcy for yourself. And I hope you come to that soon, or sooner than later, I'll say.
I appreciate that. And, I'm very fortunate that I work in the mental health field. I'm a clinical assistant for a special ed program that has some just incredibly traumatized kids that we work with, and I'm surrounded by an incredible team of compassionate mental health professionals. And I have a lot of mental health professionals in my personal life that are very willing to do check-ins with each other. And I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of caring, supportive people in my life. And I know that not everybody has that right now. So if I can help normalize conversations about, having long-term complex clinical depression, having complex PTSD, Konrad, in March, I was as close to being suicidal as I've ever been in my life. And working on this comic really kind of helped bring me back. I spent a month in an outpatient mental health program. And it's because of the people in my life that I felt supported and comfortable to even do that. And I think it's important, especially guys my age. Like I was born in 1978. I was raised in the 80s. I was one of those feral children that, you know what I mean? So like my generation, a lot of us don't have the understanding of mental health that, millennials and Gen Z have, and I feel like people my age are doing a lot of catch up. So if I can help somebody, understand that it's okay to not be okay, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's okay to laugh about really heavy, hard shit to deal with. And it's okay to be hurt and still it's the only thing that's not okay is it's not okay to talk about what you're going through with somebody, so if us having this conversation, I appreciate you letting me kind of soapbox. If us having this conversation encourages somebody to reach out to, a trusted person in their life to say, hey, I need some help. Just, if you're struggling, just get help. It's, it's easier said than done. But once you start processing the shit that you've gone through, your chest just kind of opens up. And it's an ongoing process for me. Like I'll never be healed of all the stuff in my past. Like that's just not a thing. But I'll be able to carry my weight better.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like it's one of those things. Like just for some context, I have a BA in psych.
Okay.
So I'm very familiar. Plus, I keep up, and a lot of my friends, in some capacity, are dealing with either being neurotypical or having mental health struggles. I'm sure I'm there myself. I just haven't gotten to a doctor to actually deal with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know how thick the DSM-5 is. None of us are getting out without at least having one thing.
The irony, I have one over on my shelf. It's one of those things where to sort of add on to what you were saying earlier, I cannot stress this enough that by seeking help, as you mentioned, you don't have to go to a psychiatrist, to a psychologist, to a counselor. Seeking help can be, hey, bud, can we talk? Or, hey, the term is getting popular. Hey, can I trauma dump on you for a bit? I don't love that term, but it gets across the point, I think. Yeah. It's just that sharing what you're going through, just to be able to say it even can help a lot. And then to be able to, have a friend or someone you trust, like you said, accept it, maybe give some ideas, maybe just give some reassurance. Like it's extremely helpful. And I mean, that's a part of some of that being human and living stuff that we're talking about.
And I'm a firm believer that if you can say something out loud and or joke about something, it's not too big to process. You can joke about something, you can cope with it.
Oh, I like that.
I'll be honest with you. My first reaction, I'm on the phone with a medical examiner who is 3.5, 6 hours away from me in my mom's apartment, doing what medical examiners do. The first thing I said to her was, have you ruled the cat out as a suspect?
Nice.
And maybe not the healthiest way to process in that moment, but it was it was the tool I had available to me. And if I didn't say something, I don't know that I would have been able to handle it in that moment, you know?
No, exactly. And you know what? It got you moving forward. It got you to that next step to be able to deal with the monumental idea and wrapping your head around the fact that what has happened.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, that's, like I said, I cannot fathom, and I fear the day that happens to me, that one of, if not both of my parents pass away. It's like, so
and I also love the idea that people aren't really gone until people stop saying their name. So joking about my mom and telling stories about her and all of that keeps her around.
100%. Absolutely. I was thinking about this earlier today, like the idea of immortality, right? And how could you live forever? I'm like, well, the only actual makes sense is up here for people, right? So like you said, keeping someone's memory alive, even if it's not in the overt way of like, oh, however many years from now, oh, today would have been so and so's X number birthday, but just incorporating their thoughts, their understanding, their knowledge into what you do even helps. Yeah. So PJ, as much as I love that we've been talking about this, we are here to talk about your book.
Sure.
But I could not touch on this. What impacts or what type of place does mental health, loss, grieving, all that stuff have in taking out the dead?
Well, I think just personally, it's a place for me. Now I just had that revelation. It's a place for me to process, right? Just in the writing of the story. But Carl's character, I think I'm trying to find a way to put Carl through some shit.
Oh God. Okay.
Like I do want Carl to go through a mental health journey, and it's gonna be a real fine line to walk, because I need to keep him as a trustworthy reporter. Like he's got to be a narrator that the audience can trust what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want him, like, he's never going to leave his apartment, and he's dealing with the zombie apocalypse. No one person can cope with that alone.
No man is an island, right?
That's just too heavy for one person to deal with in a healthy fashion. Excuse me. So I'm trying to figure out how, over the course of the story, however many issues we're able to make, how can I show him going through that process for himself? And I might not be a good enough writer to tell that story, but I'm gonna try.
Well, I look forward to what that looks like over however many issues you get to do. One thing that I am very curious about is, as someone who works in mental health, when it comes to writing things like that, things like showing people going through it, showing people how they're processing, is there any specific or I guess special care or consideration you're taking into how you might show that? More than, I suppose, like myself or Joe Blow off the street might be able to do, because of your knowledge, because of your work, and that you're in it every day.
I don't know that there's any real conscious difference. I am trying to be precious with the violence in the book. I don't want it to be gore porn. Because the undead wandering around, people, whether they're zombies or not, getting shot in the face, those are traumatic images, whether they're photographs of real people or they're drawn images. Those are traumatic images, and we've been able to package them in an appealing way for entertainment, but exposure at too young of an age can cause problems. Overexposure can cause issues. So I'm trying to be a little bit precious with with violent imagery without being G-rated.
Okay.
And really just trying to write the story from an informed perspective, so that my character, so that the characters make maybe they don't make informed choices, but I give them informed choices to make. Or I give them choices that are informed, so maybe it elevates a little bit, the way the story comes across.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing I've ever really thought about until now. You're really stretching me out here.
Good. I mean, you know what? If I'm not asking interesting questions and giving you a little something to push back on and chew on and think about, I don't think I'm doing my job right.
I appreciate it. It also means that you give a shit about the book, which is
absolutely. Yeah. That being said, PJ, we got 8.5 minutes left. So very kindly, what I would have you do is briefly recount for the folks out there, again, whether they're tuning in now or watching sometime in the next 19 days. Let them know what a digital copy, a physical copy, and being drawn into the book would run them.
So $5 for the base digital copy of issue 1. $8 plus shipping for a physical copy of any of the 3 variants. $50 gets you an audio cassette with music by Fluid Factory and a 3.5-inch floppy disk with exclusive content that I have yet to make, but I'm working on. And $100 gets you drawn in the book as a zombie that's getting shot in, on, or around the face.
I love it. Again, super cool. Right on point from every other campaign I've known for the digital, right where it ought to be. Same with the physical, keeping it inexpensive, accessible, and that way people can enjoy it. And that's what I like to hear. That being said, PJ, we've got 6 minutes, 20 seconds left. So I've got 2 last questions for you. So my second last question is going to be fairly simple, I think. Often people who make comics are quite nerdy, and us nerds, we love collecting stuff, whether it's books, figures, stamps, taxidermy, whatever's your thing. But of your collection, what is the thing that maybe not the most valuable, maybe not the most rare, but what's the thing that makes you the most happy that you have?
I have a baseball bat that is autographed by 27 Hall of Famers. And it's a collection that my mom and my grandparents and I put together when I was a kid. And when I look at that bat, I think of all the weekends that I spent with my family going to baseball card shows, just being a family. And now that all 3 of those people are gone, it is something that I have to remember them all by. And you could offer me, Todd McFarlane could walk in my door and offer me $4 million in the Barry Bonds asterisk ball, and I would tell him to pound sand. There is not enough money in this world to get me separated from that bat.
That's incredible. I am sure we could take an hour to discuss how that bat became a thing, all the games you've seen, how the hell you got that many signatures. Because that's just incredible. But it's also, to sort of get to the root of what we've been talking about, that's an amazing family heirloom, amazing sort of remembrance of your family, your time spent together. And who knows, maybe if you have kids, or when you have kids, or if you've got nephews, whoever is the next in the curling line, so to speak, you can add a couple more of those signatures, enjoy a couple more games, and give it to them for them to keep moving. And who knows, maybe that will become the craziest, most signed bat in the world. It probably already is, actually.
It's up there.
Yeah.
It's got some crazy names on it.
That's amazing. And then, PJ, my last question for you. Who out there in the world, creating comics ideally, do you think we should have on the show next to help sort of showcase and support the work?
Well, first I want to shout out Travis Gibb, who is working on Granite State Punk 4 with his art partner and my cover artist, Patrick Buermeyer. I also want to put you on to Peter Hart and Balor, which is an Irish comic book that is currently in pre-launch for issue number 3. And Christopher Rhodes, who is kickstarting his very interesting superhero book called 10.
10. One more time, because I was typing Peter's name. The third person's name?
Christopher Rhodes.
Christopher Rhodes. 10. T-E. Yeah, 10 number 1.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. I always like taking these down because, as I mentioned sort of way earlier, the comics community is so supportive of
100%.
everyone in it, of comics creators. They shout each other out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can, I do. That being said, PJ, this has been an absolutely fascinating, fun, and heartfelt interview. I've had a really good time, and I wanted to say
I've loved every 56 minutes and 17 seconds of it, Konrad. It's been a delight to talk to you, and I'm so thankful for the opportunity, and I've so enjoyed this time. I really have.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Obviously, for anything that you do in the future, I will be happy to have you back on. Because, yeah, I think you're fantastic, that people should go out now, back the book. Again, just Google, plain and simple, Taking Out the Dead Kickstarter. You will find it. You will enjoy it. And get a floppy disk. And a floppy disk drive, or borrow one from your buddy, or find the person who has one. But I absolutely love it. And again, thank you. And yeah, and for the folks at home on YouTube land, thank you for tuning in, whether you're doing it now live with us or sometime in the next 19 days when you back the campaign. Kindly like, subscribe, and comment down below what you think of PJ, of his work, of the book, the campaign, and zombie stories. And we'll see you next time.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2. Collect a